US police have arrested a man suspected of murdering conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The suspect has been named as Tyler Robinson, who's 22 and from Utah. Authorities say he was turned into police after a family member told a friend that he had confessed or implied that he had killed the 31-year-old 2 days ago. US President Donald Trump has called for the death penalty in the case.
This is Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old from southwestern Utah, now in custody over the killing of Charlie Kirk. The news was broken by the president on breakfast television.
I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody, right? In custody.
It was confirmed an hour and a half later by the governor of Utah.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident.
It was the release of these images of a suspect entering the Utah Valley University that led to the breakthrough. After the shooting of Kirk at a public event in a crowded courtyard, a suspect was filmed running across a rooftop, jumping to ground level and leaving the college in the direction of woods where a rifle was later found. He doesn't appear to have changed his clothes.
When encountered in person by investigators in Washington County on September 12th, in the early morning hours, Robinson was observed in consistent clothing with those surveillance images. Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate.
While the authorities think they have their man and prepare to charge Robinson, the soul-searching over this latest act of political violence in America is only just beginning. Meanwhile, Charlie Kirk's remains were brought back to his home state of Arizona on Air Force Two by his friend, Vice President J.D. Vance.
And let's get more on this from Sean now. Sean, what more is known about the 22-year-old man who's being held in custody?
Well, the authorities aren't releasing that much information. Reporters, people on social media are turning up various bits and pieces about him. The authorities hanging back because they are building a case and they haven't actually charged him with anything as of yet. And they've got 3 days to do that. But from what we know so far, yes, 22-year-old white male, single as far as we know. He is registered as an independent voter in the state of Utah. In America, people tend to express a party preference so they can vote in primaries. The electoral records show that he's been inactive, so he hasn't voted in the last two elections and hasn't been responding to mail from the Electoral Commission at all. He does appear to know how to shoot. He seems to have done a shooting safety course, a gun safety course, when he was about 11 years of age. And photographs that have been posted up by various people on social media show somebody, apparently this individual, in apparently a very stable, normal, average American family type setting. The parents were registered as Republican voters, but there's no indication of any Republican or any kind of political activity on the behalf of this young man until recently, when his family spoke of him becoming more politically engaged in his thought process and in the type of speech that he was making and turning against Charlie Kirk, expressing a lot of anti-Charlie Kirk sentiments, including, as you heard from the governor of Utah, a recent family dinner. The university where the shooting took place confirmed that he had been a student for one semester back in 2021, so he was familiar with that campus, but what he's been doing since then, I don't have that information at the moment. Sharon.
Washington correspondent Sean Whelan, thank you. Returning now to the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk in the United States. And we can go to Utah now and speak to news correspondent Steve Futterman. Steve, thank you for joining us. You're at the scene of where that shooting took place earlier this week. What we now know is that somebody has been arrested, a 22-year-old. What more do we know about him?
Well, his name is Tyler Robinson. The the big news conference a few hours ago actually took place in the building behind me. But this is a young man, 22 years old, and we're learning a bit more about how they found him. If you remember, 24 hours ago, authorities basically had no idea who the person was. They didn't have a name. They really were a bit clueless, except for having pictures that showed who the suspect was. Apparently, last night, local time here, his father recognized some of the pictures. He told his son he knew it was him. His son became very, very emotional. According to law enforcement sources I've been reaching out to, the son said he'd rather kill himself than surrender. The father then called in a youth pastor who the son was familiar with. The pastor contacted the U.S. Marshal's office. They came, they detained Tyler Robinson, and then the FBI came to arrest him. So there were some emotional moments last night, according to these law enforcement sources. We heard from the governor today basically saying some of that the father, along with a minister, helped have him surrender to authorities. So this is the timeline of the surrender. But apparently, prior to these pictures and the father saying, "It's you, my son," authorities had no clue who Tyler Robinson was.
And we know that reaction to this shooting, it has been fiery on both sides, on the right and on the left. Was there any attempt at that press conference that took place where you are? Was there any attempt at that press conference to try to cool that down?
A bit, yes. The governor here, Spencer Cox, he is a very Republican conservative man, but he has some of these moderate views. You know, this is a state that has a great deal of Mormon background, and I would say his Mormon background maybe helped bring him to the point where he was just urging people to come together. He said Democrats and Republicans. He talked about a city here in Utah where people he knows who are Democrats and Republicans are going to get together tonight just to cool down the fervor, cool down the emotions right now. And that's a big concern. It does appear, though, that this was a political decision by Tyler Robinson. The governor did disclose that Tyler Robinson in recent years had become more political, not radicalized, but more political, and that before the incident on earlier this week, that he had talked with family members about Charlie Kirk coming to this school where he briefly attended a few years ago. Tyler Robinson attended a few years ago, and the family member and Tyler Robinson talked about how they did not like Charlie Kirk, how they felt he spread hate, and so. But there's a big road, a long road to go from being politically involved, not liking someone, and actually allegedly killing someone. So I think we want to learn how this apparent radicalization took place, what triggered him to actually carry out a murder. You can be opposed to someone, you can march against them, everything, but to kill someone, that's a long, long step from just being opposed to someone's political views.
Charlie Kirk's body was taken back to his home of Arizona, and President Trump has said he will attend the funeral there. Remind us just how important Charlie Kirk was to President Trump.
Well, in the sense that Donald Trump got a much larger percentage of the youth vote last year than he got in 2020. Charlie Kirk was everyone on both sides. They may not agree with his politics, but liberals, conservatives, Charlie Kirk was a talented and charismatic political organizer. Last 10 years, he's been organizing youth to move over to become Republicans. He would come on these campuses like he came here. He would say, "Challenge me, prove me wrong." And he liked to engage, especially liked to engage with people who disagreed with him. And it worked for him. He was able to really help Trump last year. He's not the only reason, but he was a key figure in getting the youth vote to go much more for Trump than it had gone in the past. And of course, last year, there were a number of groups that went more for Trump than in 2020, and that helped lead to his election to the White House.
You mentioned the governor of Utah today. Today, he referred to this assassination as a watershed in American history at a time when political attacks have increased. Is that wishful thinking?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I agree with him, but I understand what he's saying. He feels, and there are others who agree with him, that this is a moment where the country has to decide, are we going to be angry with each other, go after each other, violently in some cases, or can we agree to disagree? It's very hard, I think, for people on the left to take that more moderate view when you have Donald Trump sort of poking you all the time. I don't know if Donald Trump would take that view. If the president, if the president had said that, I think it might have more impact. But he is a governor. He's the governor here. He's a governor who feels strongly about that. But that's not what I think he's saying. He's saying that the country is in such a state right now that people have to decide, are we going to, like I said, I'm using that term, he didn't use it, agree to disagree, or are we going to have these violent confrontations?
News correspondent in Utah, Stephen Futterman, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Sure.